Alright, fine. We're doing keyboard content again. I'm back here. Oh, shit. Hi. Hello. It's been a while. I haven't done keyboard stuff in a long time. I mean, if you see my IEM stuff, then yeah, you've definitely seen me before. But if you are, here for my keyboard crap, I haven't done that in a long time, and might as well talk about the thing that I've been putting off for months. I've had this guy for months. This is a mechanical keyboard with a built-in screen. And you guys have probably seen it in my other videos, but I just haven't talked about it very much. So let's talk about it today. I got this from some crowdfunding thingy, and so this is one of the early models. So there are issues with it, which I'll touch on later. This is the Ficihp, a multifunctional touch keyboard. I think they meant to spell Ficihp, but they spelled it wrong. Look, they spelled it wrong. This is how they spelled it. But yeah, let's talk about it. Alright, starting with the box, it looks kind of nice with all the whole golden lettering kind of stuff on it. And on the back, you can tell you can connect it to a PC, laptop, or even like phones and whatnot if you want to. But anyway, if we take a look inside the box, we actually get the keyboard itself, as well as this carrying pouch, which honestly won't give it much protection, but I guess it'll protect it from scratches. I also got this pleather wrist rest, which is kind of bad. I'll show you guys later. Anyway, you also get a USB-C cable for more simple connections like laptops, tablets, and phones and whatnot. And if you're on a PC with a dedicated GPU, you're going to get this cable, which goes from USB-C to HDMI, as well as two USB-As, one for the keyboard and one for the hub on the keyboard. You also get a dual purpose keycap and switch puller, because this keyboard is hot swappable. And of course, you do get a manual. Alright, now onto the keyboard. It's pretty simple. It's basically just a 65% keyboard connected to a built-in screen. My first impressions were, overall kind of mad because, like, the keycaps are, like, really cheap ones. You can kind of tell they're the cheap PBT ones you'll find in cheaper keyboards. And when it comes to the frame of the keyboard, it is made of metal, but overall, when you pick up the keyboard, it is kind of light. So the metal used is kind of on the thinner side, including on the bottom plate. And as you can see here, there's some pretty large rubber feet, so it'll grip onto your table. And there's a set of flip-out feet to adjust the angle of your keyboard, but unlike the rest of the keyboard, these are made of plastic. The keyboard's frame is pretty simple overall, being very flat with a few angles here and there, and off to the side, we'll notice we get a very light angle to the keyboard for typing. At the very top of the keyboard, we'll find our main ports, the USB-C to power the entire keyboard, a hub of two USB-A ports, which do transfer data, so you can plug your wireless mouse or even like a numpad into them if you felt like it. There's also buttons for screen brightness, as well as one for power for the screen. Speaking of which, the screen is a properly laminated glass touchscreen with a 1080p resolution, though it is kind of short, so it's 1080p by 515p, running at a 60 Hz refresh rate. As for the type of display the screen is, I'm not entirely sure what it is. I'm pretty sure it's not an IPS display though. It might just be an LCD display, but the colors and the contrast is actually quite nice and the viewing angles are great. It's supposed to be just a supplementary monitor, so you're not going to be doing anything too intense on it. So for what it is and what you're getting, this is perfectly fine. In practical usage, you will have to set up the monitor to make sure that your computer does know that this monitor is the touchscreen monitor. Otherwise, your touch on this monitor will actually have the cursor on your main monitor. But once you're set up, you should be good to go. The touchscreen here works perfectly fine, but I wouldn't say it's the fastest thing in the world. Not that I expect anyone to be playing games on this as their main monitor. It also does support multi-touch, so you can also do basic gestures like pinching to zoom. Now the screen is a reflective glass screen, so you will leave some fingerprints as you can see here. So, do bear that in mind. You'll have to wipe that down every now and then, much like your phones, tablets, and iPads. Now for my personal usage, I use it for exactly what most people would probably use it for. Discord. I also tried using it to run OBS on it, but I did find it to be a little bit vertically tight, so I couldn't see my chat feed very well on here. But for all intents and purposes of what it is and what it can do as a touchscreen monitor on my keyboard, it worked perfectly fine, especially as a Discord monitor. What isn't fine, however, is the fit and finish. As you can see here, it's not exactly perfectly fitted with the frame of my keyboard, and also it seems to come up just a bit, so it's not perfectly glued in, or maybe the wires are pushing it up. And I don't think my display has been glued in properly because the corner of the screen keeps coming up a little bit, and the screen being a screen, it heats up during use. It seems to be warming up the adhesive under it, causing it to loosen up and just letting the screen come up at the corner constantly. Now I should note that the screen issue is probably a just me kind of problem, because I was part of the whole crowdfunding project to get this board, and when you crowdfund a project, the company probably had to rush them out because it was kind of clear from the updates that they were trying to rush out all the orders to the early buyers, the early birds who backed the project. And when things are rushed out, there are issues in the finished product, which happens to a lot of crowdfunding projects, and I would expect that's what happened with this keyboard, where the screen wasn't glued down as well as it should have. I'm expecting that if you guys were to go out and buy this right now, you wouldn't run into those issues because those issues would be solved by now. I might be the only guy to have this kind of lemon in the batch. I might be just a handful, but I don't expect this to be an issue with like the more produced ones later because they're probably more carefully done. So I might just be very unlucky just because I was, you know, an early bird backer. If you got this keyboard and you had this issue, let me know in the comments. I'm very curious. And if you did have this issue, let me know if you were also one of the people who backed this keyboard. I'm genuinely curious. And if you didn't have issues, let me know if you got it off Amazon or something like that. I'm also genuinely curious. But you know, yeah, like I said, this might be just an unfortunate me thing. It's kind of sucks though. I'll probably just glue it on myself.
What also kind of sucks is the fact that mine came with blue switches. I don't think I remember like telling him not to get blue switches, so that might be just on me. On the bright side, the keyboard is hot swappable, so if you don't like the switches it came with, you can always just change them out. On the bright side, the switches that it did come with are Gateron switches, and honestly, those aren't bad. And while I did say that the keycaps weren't that great earlier, they're at least double shot ones. Like they're your pretty cheap double shot PPT keycaps you see in the market these days, placed on basically every like budget board, but it's still double shot, so I guess I'll give them some points there. I still think they suck though. Anyway, let's take a closer look at this keyboard in its more stock configuration. The look on the table is nothing to write home about. It looks like your standard budget 65% keyboard with a screen that just happens to be attached to it. And yes, just like many standard budget keyboards out there, there are built-in functions on the keyboard to adjust and change the RGB patterns and whatnot. And I guess if you want to complete the package, here's the wrist rests that it came with, which is utter garbage. It doesn't even match the look of the keyboard and it can't even lay flat. So I'm willing to bet that this included wrist rest was most likely an afterthought, but I guess it could be a victim of like being rushed out for early bird backers for the project, but this is pretty unacceptable. So for my case and purposes, I'm gonna be using the wrist rest from Wu-Ting, which is like made of silicone or something like that, and this is my absolute favorite wrist rest. I've also reviewed this thing before, so if you want to check that video out, I'll leave a little thing-a-ling in the corner. And with all that said and done, let's get a sound test of this keyboard in its stock configuration. Yeah, it's not that great, and that's why we're gonna mod this boy. These keycaps, they gotta go. These key switches, no, these gotta go. And while we're at it, let's dismantle this keyboard to see what else we can do to it. Like after removing the top plate, which is made of aluminum, and then like lifting up the PCB, we'll see that the case is very hollow and there's actually plastic under here. So this keyboard is more like a plastic keyboard that is encased in a metal case, if that makes sense. And this will affect the way the keyboard sounds. Something I also noticed that is made of plastic is this little divider that separates the arrow keys from the rest of the keys. That also is just a plastic clip-in apparently. Sort of a weird design choice if you ask me, but at least it's something I can paint further down the line. As for our plate-mounted stabs, they kinda suck, so they should be replaced, but for our case and purposes, we're just gonna add some grease to them to make them nice and lube. I'll also be clipping them to make the most of what I got. And if I'm gonna keep on making the most of what I got out of these stabs, I might as well also band-aid mod them, just to see how far I can push these stock stabs. As for the case itself, we'll be throwing foam inside of it because it's just a very hollow case. And to make matters worse, after removing the bottom plate, my suspicions were right. This is basically a plastic keyboard encased in a metal case. And this bottom section here also happens to be very hollow, so we're going to be throwing a lot of foam in here. And hopefully this won't take out too much of the thockiness in the sound of the keyboard. And with all that said and done, we can finally throw some switches in here, but I did run into a few problems. I originally wanted to put some Xylent switches in here, but there was a main problem in the design with the LEDs on the board. The LEDs on this keyboard aren't exactly very low profile SMD LEDs. They kind of stick out a little bit, meaning that the only switches that would fit this board are the ones with like little gaps for LEDs, like the ones that came stock on this keyboard. My Xylent switches unfortunately don't have that gap, instead having pinholes for LEDs to like slot through those holes. This then means the type of switches I can use on this keyboard are now limited to the ones that have this open slot. So I instead decided to use some cream switches which I had recently lubed, and since they have the gap for the LEDs, they should fit in the board no problem. As for keycaps, I decided to go with some SA profile keycaps to kind of make up for like the thock we might have lost by filling this thing up with foam. And after all these mods, hopefully we'll have a much better sounding keyboard, which you will now hear in the sound test.
Yeah, no, the stabs are trash.
Yeah, honestly, I probably should have just changed out those stabs from the start, but everything else sounded pretty okay at least.
Now, is this board worth it? That's a hard thing to answer because this is a very specifically designed kind of keyboard. Where the main feature, yeah, is the fact that, you know, it has a screen. I mean, yeah, it does have a mechanical bit if you bought the mechanical version, but the nicest thing you have here is this extra screen here, and how much this is worth it to you depends on how much you value having a screen. It's not the best sounding keyboard out there. I think we can make it work if you put a lot more work into it. As with like most mechanical keyboards, you'll have to mod it, but this one's gonna need a lot of work to get to like a point where I'm happy. I'm getting close. I'll kind of get there. If I ever figured out like a really good sound out of it, I'll make like a YouTube short on it, because why the hell not? But in the meantime, I'm pretty okay with how it is right now. With what I'm getting and what it can do, I do actually like it a lot for what it is. Yeah, it's not the best sounding. Yeah, I have better sounding keyboards. And if the screen was glued in better, that'd be goddamn great too. But overall, it's not bad, simply because the main focus of this when I got it wasn't the keyboard as much as the fact that it's a keyboard with a screen. Because while my other keyboards sound better and are like way better in quality, they don't have a little screen to it. I do wish I had the ability to make, you know, the screen kind of flip like that. Like if this keyboard gets a version 2, I better see like a hinge for the screen, because that would be so cool. And like, I don't know, behind the screen could be like a little storage there, some like USB ports or whatnot. That'd be kind of neat. Like, you know, plugging in your wireless USB stuff under the screen. That was just nicely hidden in a little cubby, and you close it up, it's all good to go. Though I guess you could lose your stuff in there, but, you know, I don't know. I just want the screen to come up if there's a V2 or something like that. Or I guess I could mod it myself. My screen is coming up. I probably shouldn't. Alright, now I guess the really big question is it really worth it? And for most people, I don't know. It's such a weird product, but for those of you who often have a second screen where you're just going to be using it for like Discord and whatnot, and communications or OBS, I think this would be a pretty good buy, just because that's all you'll be using that screen for. While you're barely looking at it, you're just there, you know, you just have it on your screen to monitor it, and you're just playing your games or streaming or whatnot. I think a lot of people would find value in that, as having it as your second screen, or even your third screen, where, you know, because that's how I'm using it. It's nice. I like it a lot. Like, you know, despite not sounding as great as it could, I still do very much enjoy it, and I'm probably going to work on it a lot more just to try to get that sound, like I said before, and I'll probably post some videos about it if it does get any better. So that's pretty much all I have for today. So if you do want to buy it, like I said, there's a little link in the description to, like, you know, you can buy it from it. I believe it's the same keyboard, because once like things get mass manufactured, I guess it just loans it out to a bunch of companies and puts it under like different brand names and whatnot. Should be the same thing though, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to buy this board and try it out yourself, mod it out yourself, you know, all that good stuff. So yeah, that's it for today. And if this video did help you out at all, do leave me a like, subscribe for more content, hit the notification bell if you want to know when I'm posting next, and I also stream on Twitch these days. I try to be more consistent. And with all that aside, that's it for today, so I'll see you guys next time.